Let me start with the truth that still shakes me, even now. The day my own son stole my house key was the day I realized I wasn't welcome in the home I paid for. I was 59 then, still strong in the body but already tired in the soul. It was a cold Thursday morning when I found the key missing. Not lost, not misplaced. Taken. And I knew who took it. My son, Marcus. My baby boy who used to fall asleep on my chest. Who used to tug on my skirt asking for cereal. Who once said, "Mama, you're my whole world." Now he couldn't even look me in the eye. I wish I could tell you the hurt came all at once. But no, hurt has patience. It creeps in slow. It watches you. And the moment you think you're safe, it reminds you you're not. That morning I walked to the front door, and something felt wrong. The lock had scratch marks on it. New ones. Fresh ones. Like someone tried to slip in when I wasn't home. I laid my hand on the doorknob, warm. Someone had been there not long before me. I called Marcus. He didn't answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. And that silence cut deeper than anything else. That evening I had a locksmith come out. The young man looked at me. Gentle smile, soft voice, like he already knew the story before I said a word. When he finished, he held up the old lock. "Ma'am," he said, "this wasn't picked. Someone used a copy." A copy. My son had made a copy. I didn't cry right away. No, I just stood there, staring at that little piece of metal, wondering how a mother ends up being treated like a stranger in the home she built with her own 2 hands. But crying always finds a way. Tears came later, quiet and tired, the way old women cry when there's no one around to hear them. That night I cooked myself some soup, the same chicken noodle Marcus loved when he was small. And while the pot simmered, I whispered to the empty kitchen, "Where did I go wrong?" But life has a strange way of answering questions, sometimes not with words, but with moments, with truths that force their way into the light. And the truth came the next morning, when the new lock did something the old one never could. It exposed the real story. And trust me when I say that story hurt a whole lot more than the stolen key. The next morning, I walked to my front door with a heaviness in my chest. I just needed answers. When I turned the new key and pushed the door open, the house greeted me with a silence that didn't feel right. Not peaceful, not warm. A guilty silence. I stepped inside slow, listening to my own footsteps, trying to convince myself nothing had changed. But the air, it felt touched, like someone else had breathed it before me. Then I noticed the rug by the hallway, crooked, and my living room lamp, tilted just a little. No real damage. Just tiny things only a woman who lives alone would notice. My stomach tightened. That's when I checked the smart lock app the locksmith had installed. He said it would track every attempt, right or wrong. I opened the log. 4 attempts. All failed. All between midnight and 2 in the morning. Someone tried to get in, after the lock was changed. I felt my knees weaken. I sat down right there on the floor, cold hardwood pressing against me, while my heart tried to outrun itself. At 1:47 a.m., there was a failed entry attempt. At 1:49 a.m., another. Then, at 1:53 a.m., the doorbell camera caught movement. I clicked the video. The screen lit up with grainy darkness. A shadow stepped into the frame. Hood up. Shoulders tense. Not a stranger. Not a thief from the street. Marcus. My baby boy stood at my door, shaking the handle, pushing his shoulder against it, like he had a right to force his way in. And when it didn't open, he cursed. Loud, raw, angry. But the worst part wasn't the anger. No. It was the look on his face. The desperation. The frustration. The fear. Not fear of me. Fear of losing something else. Something he didn't want me to see. I replayed the video again and again, trying to understand, trying to hear the truth between the lines of his breathing. When the video ended, I whispered, "Marcus, what are you running from, baby?" I stood up slowly, leaning on the wall to steady myself. My legs trembled, not from age, but from heartbreak. You see, when a stranger tries to break into your home, you call the police. But when your own child tries to break in, you call your memories, your mistakes, your regrets. Later that afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of lukewarm tea, staring at the screen, his face frozen mid-anger. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself remember everything I'd tried to forget about him. The attitude, the distance, the secrets. But that night, something inside me changed. The fear faded. A new feeling took its place. A quiet determination. Because the locks had told the story my son refused to tell. And I knew it was time to face whatever truth was coming. The next morning, I woke up with a question sitting heavy on my chest. Why was my son so desperate to get inside my house? A mother knows when something is wrong. I made myself a cup of coffee, but my hands were shaking too much to drink it. So I just held the mug, letting the warmth calm me. I stared out the kitchen window, watching the neighborhood kids run to school, their backpacks bouncing behind them. And memories washed over me. Marcus at that age, running out the door with one shoe half tied, shouting, "Mama, I'm late." God, where did that little boy go? When the house got too quiet, I grabbed my purse, threw on a sweater, and headed out. I didn't know exactly where I was going. Mothers don't need directions. Our pain leads the way. I drove to Marcus's apartment. The building looked the same as always, cracked sidewalk, peeling paint, neighbors arguing too early in the morning. But when I reached his door, something felt off. The air was thick, heavy, like the walls were keeping secrets. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, firmer this time. Still nothing. Just when I turned to leave, the door across the hall cracked open. Mrs. Henderson, his old neighbor. She looked at me with that expression older women use when they've got something to say but don't know how to say it. "You looking for Marcus, baby?" she asked softly. I nodded. "Yes, ma'am. He home?" She hesitated, the kind of hesitation that tells you the truth is about to hurt. "He ain't been here much lately, not for weeks. He's been staying with some people." People. The way she said it made my stomach twist. "What kind of people?" I asked. She sighed, lowering her eyes. "The kind that don't bring peace into nobody's life." My breath caught in my chest. I felt the world slow down. I thanked her and walked back to my car, but my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. Sitting behind the wheel, I finally allowed myself to face the possibility I tried so hard to avoid. My son wasn't just drifting. He wasn't struggling. He was sinking. Deep, fast, and whatever he was tangled up in, it had reached my doorstep. I drove home slowly, every red light feeling like a warning. When I stepped inside my house, I closed the door behind me and leaned on it, letting the truth settle in my bones. The stolen key, the late-night attempts to break in, the desperation in his face on the camera. They weren't random. They weren't mistakes. They were signs. Signs of a storm I hadn't been ready to see. I whispered into the quiet room, "Lord, whatever this is, show me how to survive it." And right then, with my back against the door, I knew one thing for sure. A mother can forgive anything, but she can't ignore danger. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and promised myself, I will find the truth, even if it breaks me. Speak. 2 days passed, slow and heavy. No call from Marcus, no text, nothing. Silence can be peaceful. But this kind of silence, it eats at you. It crawls under your skin and whispers the worst possibilities. On the third night, I sat alone at my kitchen table. Lights off, only the stove clock glowing in the dark. 11:17 p.m. I was staring at the front door like it might open on its own. Like he might walk in and say, "Mama, I'm sorry." But life doesn't give you the soft version of the truth. No, it gives you the version that breaks you first. At 11:23 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. My heart jumped so hard it hurt my ribs. I answered with a trembling, "Hello?" A deep voice responded, "Ma'am, are you Marcus Reed's mother?" For a moment I forgot how to breathe. My throat tightened. My hand shook so badly I had to grip the edge of the table. "Yes," I whispered. "Is he okay?" Another pause. A long one. The kind of pause that holds bad news inside it. "Ma'am, we found your son's wallet near an abandoned lot. His phone was smashed. We're trying to locate him." I closed my eyes. "Where is he?" I whispered. "We don't know yet." "Don't know yet." The word stabbed deeper than any truth could. I thanked the officer and hung up. Then I pressed both hands against my mouth to stop the scream rising in my chest. I walked to the living room, sat on the couch, and tucked my knees under me like a little girl. My son was out there somewhere. Hurt. Lost. Maybe worse. And suddenly, all the anger I'd been holding, the stolen key, the broken trust, the lies none of it mattered anymore. Pain turns small things into big things. But fear? Fear turns big things into nothing. All I wanted was my child alive. I got up and paced the room. I whispered prayers I hadn't spoken in years. "God, please guide him. Please hold him." Then something inside me, something old, steady, and fierce rose up. The mother in me, the fighter in me, the part of me that refuses to lose a child to the dark. I grabbed my coat, keys, and phone. I didn't know where I was going, but my feet did. They led me out the door and into the cold night air, straight toward the truth I'd been running from. Because when the police said they found his wallet near an abandoned lot, I knew exactly which lot they meant. A place I once warned Marcus never to go near. A place filled with people who didn't care if you walked away whole. I whispered into the wind as I headed to my car. "Hold on, baby. Mama's coming." The abandoned lot sat at the edge of the city, where the streetlights gave up, and the shadows took over. I pulled up slowly, headlights cutting through the dark like trembling fingers. Broken glass, burned trash cans, old graffiti screaming things nobody should ever repeat. I stepped out of the car, clutching my coat tight around my chest. The wind was cold, but fear was colder. "Marcus?" I called out. My voice cracked like it wasn't mine. No answer. I walked deeper into the lot. My shoes crunched on gravel, each step louder than the last. There were shapes in the dark, things that once had purpose but had been abandoned, just like the people who came here. And then I saw a shadow move. Low. Slow. Shaking. "Marcus?" I whispered again. The shadow lifted its head, and my heart broke open. It was him, my son, sitting against a crumbling wall, arms wrapped around his knees, jacket torn, face bruised. He looked so small, so young, so lost. When he saw me, his eyes widened not with relief, but with shame. "Mama, you shouldn't be here," he whispered. I knelt down in front of him. My knees screamed in pain, but a mother doesn't feel that kind of pain when her child is hurting. "Baby, what happened to you?" He looked down at his hands. They were shaking. "I messed up, Ma." His voice was so small I barely heard it. I cupped his face, gently, and tilted it toward the light. A fresh bruise on his cheek. Blood on his lip. fear in his eyes. "Who did this to you?" I asked. He swallowed hard. "People I thought were my friends." And then he whispered, "People I owe money to." My heart dropped, just fell straight to the ground. "How much?" He hesitated. "Too much, Ma." I pressed my forehead to his, tears falling onto his cheeks. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked. "Because I didn't want you to see me like this. And because I was looking for something in your house." I froze. "What were you looking for, Marcus?" He closed his eyes tight, as if the truth itself hurt to speak. "Money, Mama," he whispered. "I was trying to find money." The world around me went silent. No wind. No night sounds. Just the ache in my chest. I took his hands in mine. Cold. Weak. But still my baby's hands. "Come on," I said softly. "Let's get you home." He shook his head. "I can't go back there, Ma. They'll come for me." I stood up slowly, pulling him to his feet. "Then they'll have to go through me first." Because in that moment, I remembered something important, something I'd forgotten while drowning in worry. I may be 60. I may be tired. I may be broken. But I am still a mother. And mothers? We don't leave our children in the dark. I still remember the day the locks told me everything. It was a warm June morning. One of those days when the sun feels like grace, not punishment. But my heart was heavy. I had spent the whole week wondering why my son kept showing up at the house when I wasn't home, and why little things kept moving around. Not much, just enough to whisper, "Something ain't right." I didn't want to believe what I already knew. A mother always knows, but denial is a warm blanket we wrap around the truth. So I told myself, maybe I misplaced it, maybe I left that drawer open, maybe I'm just tired. But the fear wouldn't leave me alone. So I called the locksmith. I told him, "Baby, I want a smart lock, one that keeps a record, one that don't lie." He installed it in under an hour. Little did I know he was installing the truth I'd been running from. The first night, nothing. The second night, nothing. On the third night at 2:47 a.m. my phone lit up. Front door unlocked. My heart fell so fast I swear it shook the bed. I opened the app, and there it was. Entry recorded. Key number 3. The key that had gone missing the week before. My son's key. I didn't call the police. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there in the dark, watching the dots on the screen move through my hallway. Then, my bedroom door handle turned. Slow, careful, like someone testing the weight of my trust. I whispered through the door, "Jay, baby, why?" He froze. Silence thick enough to break your heart. "Mama," he said finally, I just needed money." I felt the words cut deeper than any knife. He didn't come in to hurt me. He came in to hurt himself. The drugs had hollowed him out, left him hungry for anything that looked like escape. And I had told myself for years that he'd get better on his own. But healing don't come to those who pretend nothing's wrong. When he finally opened the door and stepped inside, I saw the boy I raised hiding inside a man drowning in shame. His shoulders shaking, his pockets empty, his eyes lost. I didn't yell. I didn't push him away. I just said, "Come sit down, baby. You don't have to steal from the woman who'd give you everything." And for the first time in years, he cried in my arms like he was 6 years old again. Right then, I made a promise to myself. I would help him, but I would not let him destroy me in the process. The locks told me the truth that night. But the truth gave me back my son. The morning after that long, trembling night, my house felt different. Not quieter, not heavier, just honest. Honesty can hurt, but Lord knows it can also set a soul free. Jay slept on the couch, curled up like the same little boy who used to sneak into my bed after nightmares. Only this time, he was the nightmare. and waking up meant facing himself. I stood there looking at him, brushing crumbs off the coffee table. I whispered to myself, God, show me how to help him without losing myself. Because love, real love, needs boundaries like lungs need air. When he finally opened his eyes, he looked so ashamed he couldn't even lift his head. Mama, he whispered, voice cracking. I ain't the same person you raised. I sat beside him and placed my hand on his back. Baby people change, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. But ain't nobody too broken to be rebuilt. He cried again, quieter this time, like his heart was leaking instead of bursting. Then he told me the truth I'd been afraid of for years. He told me how the pills started, how they turned into powders, how he kept telling himself he would quit tomorrow, until tomorrow stopped coming. Mama, I hate myself, he said, his voice small, child small. And Lord, I felt that. Hating yourself is a darkness that eats you from the inside out. I grabbed his hand. You listen to me, I said, steady but gentle. You may hate yourself, but I don't, and I ain't gonna let you drown in something we can fight. He shook his head. I don't deserve help. And I leaned close, so close he had to hear every syllable. Deserving ain't got nothing to do with healing. Pain don't ask permission, and neither does recovery. He finally nodded, slowly, like a man agreeing to climb a mountain barefoot because the valley behind him is burning. We spent the next hour calling rehab centers, making plans, filling forms, setting dates. Every click on my phone felt like a tiny step toward the son I used to know. Before he left to check himself in, he hugged me. Not the rushed kind, not the guilty kind. A real hug, heavy with regret, heavy with hope. He whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." And I whispered back, "Thank you for choosing to fight." As the door closed behind him, I felt something strange. Not fear, not sadness. Peace. Sometimes peace ain't quiet. It's simply the moment you stop carrying someone else's shame. The day Marcus checked into rehab, my house felt too quiet. Not peaceful this time. Just empty. Like someone had gently lifted a weight off my chest, but left a bruise behind. I walked from room to room, touching the walls, the furniture, the memories. Everything looked the same. But nothing felt the same. Healing does that. It shakes the foundation and leaves the house standing crooked for a while. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at Marcus's coffee mug. The same chipped blue mug he used as a teenager when he'd sit across from me talking about his dreams. Lord, what happened to those dreams? As I traced the crack along the side of the mug, a thought hit me so hard it stole my breath. How many cracks had I ignored in him because I didn't want to see the break? A mother's denial is powerful. It can hide a storm behind a smile. The first night without him, I couldn't sleep. The bed felt too big. The air felt too loud. I kept listening for footsteps, even though I knew they weren't coming. At 2:47 a.m., the same time the smart lock had exposed the truth, I found myself pacing the hallway. My hands shaking, my mind racing. That's when I realized the house wasn't empty. I had spent years carrying Marcus, trying to save him, trying to stitch together all the pieces he kept tearing apart. But saving someone can make you forget you're a person too. I stepped outside onto the porch, wrapped a shawl around my shoulders, and looked up at the night sky. God, I whispered, show me how to heal without him here. And the silence answered me in its own quiet way. The next morning the sunlight felt different. Softer, brighter. I brewed myself a cup of coffee in my own mug, not his, and something inside me settled. Not happiness, not relief, acceptance. I made a list of things I needed to reclaim. My health, my friendships, my hobbies, my joy. Because somewhere in the chaos of loving Marcus, I had lost myself. Before noon, I got the first call from the rehab center. Marcus had arrived safely. He had checked in voluntarily. He had asked them to tell me, "Mama, I'm trying." And Lord, I broke right there in the kitchen. Not from pain, but from hope. Real hope. The kind you taste like warm bread after starving for months. That afternoon, I looked around my house again. And for the first time in years, the emptiness didn't scare me. It invited me. Because healing ain't just for the broken person. It's for the one who held them together too. And I was ready, finally, to start healing myself. 3 weeks passed. 3 long, quiet, healing weeks. I had started breathing again, slowly, carefully, like someone learning how to live after holding their breath for years. I watered my plants. I took short walks. I even called an old friend I hadn't spoken to in ages. Life was still fragile, but it was finally my own. Then one evening, just as the sun was melting into the horizon, someone knocked on my door. A slow, uncertain knock. The kind that carries a memory in it. My heart jumped. For a moment I thought it was Marcus, coming home too soon, coming home broken. But when I opened the door, it wasn't him. It was my daughter, Lena. The same daughter who once told her kids not to hug me. The same daughter who said I was too much, too strict, too loud, too emotional, too everything. She stood there holding a casserole dish, my mother's recipe, the one I taught her when she was 16. I hadn't seen her make that recipe in years. Not since she decided distance was safer than honesty. "Mama," she said softly, "can I come in?" I froze for a second. Not because I didn't want her there, but because healing makes you cautious. Love needs boundaries, even with your own child. But I stepped aside. "Come on in, Lena." Her shoulders dropped with relief. We sat in the living room and she placed the casserole between us like it was some kind of peace offering. Maybe it was. She looked around the room, then at me. "I heard about Marcus," she whispered. "The neighbors have big mouths." I laughed, just a little, enough to break the ice. Then her face changed, the way a sky changes before rain. "Mama, I'm sorry," she said. "I judged you. I judged him. I judged everything I didn't understand." My breath caught in my throat. Those were words I'd been waiting to hear for years, but never expected to. "I didn't want to raise my kids around addiction," she continued. "And instead of talking to you, I shut you out. I hurt you. I know that." I closed my eyes for a moment, letting her words sink in, letting the past loosen its grip. When I opened them, she was crying. Not loud, not dramatic, just tears sliding down her face, like truth melting into forgiveness. I reached for her hand. "Lena, motherhood ain't easy. Loving ain't either. We both did what we thought was right at the time. But baby, it's never too late to come home." She collapsed into my arms, shaking, whispering, "Mama, I miss you." And I held her like I'd held Marcus the night the locks told the truth. Strong, steady, forgiving. That night we ate dinner together for the first time in years. 2 women, 2 wounds, trying to stitch something whole again. And as she washed the dishes afterward, humming an old church song, I felt something warm bloom inside me. Hope doesn't always return through the same door it left. Sometimes, it comes knocking in the hands of the child who once walked away. I used to think healing happened in big, dramatic moments, the kind you see in movies. But at 60, I've learned healing whispers. It doesn't shout. It shows up in sunlight hitting the kitchen counter, in the hum of the refrigerator late at night, in the quiet decision to choose peace, even when pain feels easier. Marcus came by the other day. Not for long. Just a few minutes. He stood by the doorway, like he wasn't sure if he belonged in his own mother's home. I didn't force him in. Didn't guilt him. Didn't list my disappointments. I simply opened the door wider and stepped back. He walked in slowly, like someone entering a memory. He looked around. The same photos, the same soft lamp in the corner, the same smell of lemon polish and vanilla candles. "Ma," he said softly, "it feels the same, but I feel different." And Lord, my heart almost broke again right there. We sat. Two people with a lifetime between us, some of it beautiful, some of it bruised. He apologized again. Not for the key, not for the locks, not for the silence, but for something deeper, for letting his pain speak louder than his love. I told him the truth, the kind that comes from a 60-year-old soul. You can't break someone who's already rebuilt herself. But you can help her grow, he cried, quietly, the way grown men cry when they've been holding it for decades. I held his hand, and for the first time in years, there was no tension. Just a mother and her son, breathing in the same moment. Later that night, after he left, I sat on the couch and realized something. This story, my story, was never about the key he stole, or the people who laughed, or the locks that protected me. It was about the doors I kept locked, inside myself. Doors made of fear, doors made of shame, doors made of old wounds I never allowed to heal. Marcus didn't unlock those. I did. Because forgiveness isn't a gift you give someone else. It's the key you hand yourself, so you can finally walk out of your own prison. So here I am, 60 years old, a little tired, a little wiser, a whole lot softer. And if you're listening to me right now, I want you to know something. There's always a door inside you, waiting for you to open it. And it will stay locked until you decide you deserve peace. I didn't get the life I planned, but I got the life I chose. The moment I stopped surviving and started living. And baby, that is the sweetest freedom I've ever known. Because the world may take a lot from you. Family may disappoint you. Life may crack you open in ways you never imagined. But healing belongs to you. And you? You're stronger than you think, softer than you admit, and far, far more deserving of peace than you've ever been told.